Okay. We have several people joined in already. I assume that we will get some additional attendees joining in over the next couple of minutes, but I do want to get us started because we have a lot of information that we want to share today. So welcome everyone to our second Community Engagement Forum. Thank you so much for joining in your morning, afternoons, or evenings. I'm Stephanie Seidel, the Senior Manager of Community and Stakeholder Engagement at the TB Alliance. I'm just going to take a few minutes to go over some details for the webinar and let you know what we plan to discuss today. I'll introduce the speakers and then we'll move on to our first presentation. Just a couple of housekeeping items. I just wanted to remind everyone, so please keep your videos off and your microphones muted. This will help everyone hear the speakers. If you would like to submit questions, you can do so at any time by writing them into the Q&A function. If you would like to ask a question yourself, please feel free to raise your hand at any time. During the two dedicated Q&A and discussion sections of the agenda, I will unmute you and ask you to go ahead and ask your question. We are translating this simultaneously into Portuguese and Russian. If you would like to join one of those audio channels, please click the interpretation button at the bottom of your screen and you can select the language. And just a reminder that we are recording this session and we will be sharing recordings in all languages, English, Portuguese, and Russian, along with slides after the meeting. So many of you are familiar with the TB Alliance, but just in case we have some participants that are unfamiliar with our organization, I just wanted to introduce us. TB Alliance is a not-for-profit organization. We are dedicated to discovering, developing, and delivering better, faster, and more affordable tuberculosis drugs to everyone that needs them. We will hear a little bit more about how we're planning to do that during one of our presentations this afternoon from our market access colleague. TB Alliance itself is a pretty small organization. We are based in New York and South Africa, but all of the work that we do is done through partnerships all over the world. This is just a representation of our active clinical trial sites, community engagement partners, donors, research partners that are working on discovery projects with us, and other stakeholders in various countries and all regions. Nothing that we do at TB Alliance would be possible without the partnerships that we have. I just wanted to share again what our learning objectives are for this series. For those of you just joining for the first time today, typically TB Alliance has a community engagement forum with our partners at the site level once a year in person. And we use that opportunity to do a lot of capacity building, sharing of experiences from across the sites, focused mainly on how community engagement is implemented for TB drug clinical trials. With the pandemic, we've made this into a series of webinars. And we're expanding this opportunity to not just our community engagement staff at sites, but also our research partners and local community advisory boards around sites that are conducting the ZeNix Simplicity B or the BPAMZ Siemens study. We also wanted to make this webinar series available to broader partners, stakeholders, civil society partners in countries that are conducting operational research studies or may be familiar with the BPAL regimen and are interested in getting updates from TB Alliance. What we hope this series will provide is an ongoing update on TB Alliance clinical programs, which include many of the BPA containing regimens, but we will at times also discuss studies that are not being conducted by TB Alliance, but may contain the bedaquiline pretomanid drugs as part of the regimen. And at other times we may discuss the broader TB drug pipeline. So, you know, for our partners that are most familiar with the studies that TB Alliance is conducting, we want to share all most up-to-date clinical trial results and work with partners on disseminating those results at all levels, from the clinical trial site level and with participants of clinical trials and communities that are affected by local clinical trials, as well as global partners. We also aim in this series to build capacity of country-level community advisory board members and other community stakeholders to participate in advocacy efforts around TB R&D. And we'll hear more about the learning objectives for this advocacy training from our partner, Ezio Tavera, in just a moment, and how we plan to do that with our partners. Just to review the agenda for today, we will hear about our advocacy training from Ezio Tavera from Ready to Be in Brazil. Then we will have our colleague, Dr. Folu Olubosi, present the ZeNix clinical trial results that have now been made public and were presented recently at the International AIDS Society Conference. Our partner in Moldova, Oksana Roxianu, will share some strategies for how community was engaged during the ZeNix trial in her location. Our colleague Asta Gupta from the market access team will share updates on BPAL introduction and access, and also some status updates on ongoing operational research studies. And our colleague Naoko Doi and our partner in the Philippines, Luis Zepeda, will share some of the strategies that are being implemented to engage with civil society around the BPAL introduction. I will pause for questions after the clinical trial results and community engagements for a strategy for ZeNix are presented, and then again we'll reserve about a half an hour for Q&A and discussion at the end. So with that, I'd like to introduce Ezio Tavera from Ready to Be to please present on advocacy training. Thank you.
Thank you, Stephanie. It's very exciting to be with all of you, colleagues, and possibility to be interacting also in other languages. It's a privilege to have the translation into Portuguese and Russian. As Stephanie has highlighted, the main objective is to build capacity for country-level Kaplan community to participate in research and development and advocacy around this study results and comprehending, understanding, and using those. We will work in national, regional, and global level activity. And today, particularly, we have the first opportunity to be interacting with other colleagues from different parts and different studies and different backgrounds. We are working with networking opportunities. We're exploring this with local advisory groups, and we'll find opportunities to participate in different forums. So in the first webinar, we did an assessment of what were the goals and the needs, so to say, from the communities to be doing and to develop capacities. So it's important to say that we have the next slide, please. Yeah, the main goal is to improve treatment and research literacy, as we all know. We will be working in different policy-making forums. So the goal for the communities, as they express it in our assessment, is the participation in different policy-making forums. And very important for us here is to understand that this is a process. This is not a goal per se that ends there, but it's a process where the research cycle is being processed and discussed with the local stakeholders. More than any measurement of impact, the communities have a broader role to play. And this goes to influencing internationally and globally and also discussing complementary and very important implementation policies, such as the multi-sector accountability framework by WHO. Next slide, please. We are establishing a two-way cooperation. The outcomes that we expect out of the work is to establish a close two-way cooperation between researchers and communities, and have a linkage, established linkage with different forums, caucus, fronts, such as parliamentary fronts, and have a balance between the biomedical and the human rights approach. It's important to establish also a framework that we will work with within the best practices that we learned from different and the framework of the GPP with the best practices. Thank you. Next slide. We will be working with, the way we are going to do that is to work with the local communities. Most of the Simplicity B sites have cabs, some others don't, but we will have the main is to establish a communication with the local communities and also interaction with other civil society organizations. We want to design simple materials describing the TB studies, and to discuss the treatment guidelines within these findings. Understanding the policy making rationale at each country level, it's fundamental for a good advocacy. So this is an exercise that people will do in the different scenarios where the studies are being conducted. So the main goal is for the communities to be interacting within this rationale, which is different from each country. Another point is to make messages simple. This is something that the communities have highlighted very clearly, and also developing materials and writings in conferences, participating and writing articles. Next slide. Oh, yeah. So what is needed to do so? So we will work within different formats of community engagement. Not all sites have cabs, and they not necessarily have to have one, but we'll be working with different groups, as said before. So we'll be exploring also some technologies like we are doing now in this difficult times of COVID. Very importantly, we want to interact with using the local languages and developing public speaking skills for each community. We want to be learning from the strong participation from other colleagues, communities, to be improving the advocacy skills, and we will be finally learning also a bit of the managerial skills necessary for the organizational structure. So this is all by now, but we will be connecting and we will be interacting with different partners. But I thank you very much for the audience and different partners that we are already interacting. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Ezio. As Ezio mentioned, we will in our upcoming webinars be focusing a little bit more on what is happening at the research site level with local community advisory boards and other country level partners that want to work on building advocacy skills. We'll keep everyone who's on the call today aware of when those conversations are taking place and what advancements are being made there. I would like to now introduce Dr. Olubosi from our team in Pretoria. Bolu, you're going to be sharing your own slides, so I'm going to go ahead and stop sharing now, and you can go ahead and share from your side.
Okay. All right, can you see the full slide? 1 second. Can you see the full slide?
Yep, that works.
Okay, all right. So I can go ahead?
Yep, please go ahead.
Okay, all right. Hello, everybody. Thank you for your time to listen to this presentation. So like Stephanie mentioned, I'll be presenting the top line results of the ZeNix trial. Top line, and again, it was presented at the IAS by Francesca Conradi. Top line, because we are still working on full analysis of the data and working on the finalization of the CSR, which should be complete by the ending of this year. So, so why are we performing the ZeNix studies? I mean, as a background, I mean, ZeNix is like the baby sibling of Nix. And as you remember, Nix was an open label single arm study that evaluated 1,200 milligrams of linezolid over 28 weeks in XDR, treatment intolerant and non-responsive MDR patients. The results showed 90% efficacy. It led to US FDA, EMA, India approval, and also WHO recommendation for operational research. Now, there were adverse events we've noted during the study, and it was driven primarily by linezolid. And the aim of ZeNix is to optimize linezolid dose and duration with the hope of reducing the side effects and maintaining a similar efficacy as Nix. The side effects were mostly peripheral neuropathy, which occurred in about 8 out of 10 of patients, and myelosuppression, which occurred in about half of the patients enrolled in the study. Quick reminder on the study design. I wouldn't want to go too much into this because you are quite familiar with it. But just to remind that the primary endpoint is 6 months post end of treatment, and patients were followed up for 18 months after the end of treatment. In Nix, patients were followed up for 24 months after the end of treatment. Also in Nix, the bedaquiline dosing was the package insert dosing, which is 400 milligrams daily for the first 2 weeks, and then 200 milligrams 3 times a week for the remaining 24 weeks. But in ZeNix, we used the 200 milligrams daily for 8 weeks and 100 milligrams daily for the remaining 18 weeks schedule for bedaquiline. Of course, Nix was only done in South Africa, and ZeNix was done in South Africa, Georgia, Russia, and Moldova, which makes it a much richer and diverse study in terms of the study population. We also included pre-XDR TB in ZeNix. Again, this is based on the old WHO definition of pre-XDR and XDR. So I've mentioned about the primary endpoints, some key inclusion criteria, male or female, aged 14 years or above, but in Russia and Moldova, due to local standards or guidelines, was restricted to 18 years and above. And I also mentioned the TB population that was enrolled in the study. Exclusion criteria, there were diagnostic and laboratory abnormalities. I mean, all this is in the protocol, and you can find it on clinicaltrials.gov. Also important is that the patient shouldn't have taken more than 2 weeks of bedaquiline, linezolid, or delaminid prior to the first dose of the study drug. Okay, so going straight to the results. So what this slide shows, it shows the total participants randomized by treatment arm and country. And just to remind that there were 4 treatment arms, and then the randomization was based on linezolid, and that was a partial randomization because bedaquiline and pitocin was open. Everybody knew that they got that, but linezolid was double-blinded to both the investigators and to the to the patient. So the treatment arms is really based on the linezolid dosing, and there were 4. So it was linezolid 1200 milligrams, 26 weeks, which is basically the ZeNix regimen. There was linezolid 1200 milligrams, 9 weeks, which is a shorter duration of the 1200 milligrams. There was 600 milligrams, 26 weeks, which is a lesser dose of linezolid compared to 1200. And linezolid 600 milligrams, 9 weeks, which is a lesser dose and a lesser duration. I would draw your attention to the last column, which shows that about a third of the total randomized population was from South Africa, and the rest was from Eastern Europe. That is Georgia, Russia, and Moldova. We didn't perform any randomization by region, so it's not necessarily balanced, but it still is a pretty good spread. So what this slide shows is the demographics and baseline characteristics of patients enrolled in the study. And it shows that about 20% of the population were HIV positive. 50% of the South African population were HIV positive, and virtually no positive cases in the Eastern European countries. Also interesting is that about 88% of the population were XDR or pre-XDR TB, which is a sizable number, compared to in Xenix, where we had over 34% who were in the MDR group. So we actually had more XDR, pre-XDR patients in the ZeNix study. I'm going to pause a bit just so that you can look at the data in the slides. So this slide shows the primary efficacy analysis data in the MITT population, which is the modified intention to treat population. As you will see across the treatment arms, the approximate 90% efficacy of Xenix was replicated. And this was across, again, it was across a wider geographic area compared to Xenix, which is quite encouraging. Albeit we didn't make any attempt to try to show any statistical difference in efficacy between the different arms. You can kind of see that the 600 milligrams 9 weeks arm appears to have a lower efficacy, but of course also taking note of the confidence interval, which was as low as 69.9%, and this is compared to others. So again, good efficacy across all the treatment group, but it kind of looks like the 600 milligrams 9 weeks has a bit lower efficacy compared to the rest. So going to the next slide. I apologize that this slide is quite busy, but I'll try to just make it simple and straightforward. What this slide shows is the details of the favorable and unfavorable cases, again, in the MITT population. The favorable number and percentage is exactly what you saw in the last slide. Of note is that there were only 4 relapses, which was pretty well distributed across the treatment groups, except that there were no relapses in the 1200 milligrams 26 weeks arm. There were 2 in the 1200 milligrams 9 weeks arm, and 1 each in the 600 milligrams linezolid arms. There was 1 treatment failure. There were 2 early withdrawals due to adverse events, and those 2 adverse events were drug-induced liver injury, and then a patient had an acute alcoholic psychosis, and then both were in the 600 milligrams 9 weeks arm. Now, there was this, I'll call it a phenomenon of retreatment, and this was primarily in the Russian sites. And what happens here is that, though patients are sputum culture negative at the end of treatment, even at the primary endpoint, which is 6 months after the end of treatment, the doctors in Russia have a process or a system where they perform CT scans, and if they see some things they don't like in the CT scans, like residual cavities or fibrosis or something that they feel it's not right. They tend to restart the patient on treatment. And this is something that maybe would not happen in maybe Georgia or in South Africa. So we did have a number of those retreatment cases. We had 2 cases in the 1200 milligrams, 26 weeks arm, and 1 each in the 2 600 milligrams linezolid arms. So I'll pause for a second and let you just go through this data. Okay, this slide shows what is known as the Kaplan-Meier curve of time to negative status, again in the MITT population for ZeNix. And the y-axis here shows the proportion of patients who are culture negative, and the x-axis is basically a timestamp in the study. The slide also has a similar Kaplan-Meier curve for Nix for easy comparison. Now, in ZeNix, the graph for the 1200 milligrams 26 weeks, the 1200 milligrams 9 weeks, and the 600 milligrams 26 weeks are virtually superimposable, as you can see. So they're almost the same, with a median time to culture negative of about 6 weeks. So that is about 50% of patients, that's about 6 weeks, they've already culture converted to negative. The outlier here, a bit again, is the 600 milligrams 9 weeks arm, which is pulled more to the right and shows that it has a median time to culture negative of about 8 weeks. Meaning again, half of the patients have already culture converted by 8 weeks, which I mean is still not bad. In Nix, you remember that the median time to culture negative was 6 weeks. Okay, now talking about safety. This slide shows the incidence of grade 3 and above treatment emergent adverse events and any serious adverse event reported in the study. Now, no statistical inference was performed as the study was not powered for this, but the incidence appears similar across the groups. I mean, with no clear differentiations, except there appears to be more grade 3 and above treatment emergent adverse events in the 1200 milligram 26 weeks arm compared to the rest of the other arms. All right, this slide shows adverse events of special interest, which are the peripheral neuropathy, optic neuropathy, and myelosuppression, which again is mostly due to, it is due to linezolid. And it's something that we're quite interested in. So again, it shows the incidence of participants who reported at least 1 peripheral neuropathy, 1 optic neuropathy, and 1 worsening grade of anemia. Also, I also added a table on participants who reported at least, number of participants who reported at least 1 case of myelosuppression. With regards to the peripheral neuropathy and optic neuropathy, it's quite clear that patients randomized in the 1200 milligrams 26 weeks arm appear to have a higher incidence, and the 600 milligrams 9 weeks arm had the least incidence. With regards to the optic neuropathy, all the 4 cases happened in the 12 milligrams 26 weeks arm. The good thing is that the treatment was stopped and all the cases reverted back to normal, which is good. But again, all the 4 cases happened in the 1200 milligrams 26 weeks arm. There were more cases of patients with worsening anemia in the 2 1200 milligram arms, that is 26 weeks and 9 weeks, compared to the 2 600 milligram arms. So it kind of looks like the higher the dose of linezolid, the more you seem to have all these AEs of special interest. I'll let you have a look at this. I'll pause for a few seconds. So one interesting thing we did was that we kind of noticed that there seems to be differences in terms of peripheral neuropathy and by region. And by region, I mean South Africa compared to Georgia, Moldova, and Russia. And as you can see, it's even regardless of the treatment arm, there seems to be more. It's almost like approximately 3 times more, between 2 to 3 times more peripheral neuropathy reported in South Africa compared to Georgia, Moldova, and Russia. And it's something that we found quite interesting, and I've been discussing with various investigators about what they think about this. I'm checking the time, but I do want to ask if Pauline's on the line, and if she can just give a quick thought on what she thinks could be a potential reason for this. Is Pauline on the line?
Pauline, you can unmute yourself.
There we go. Hi, Folu. Yes.
Hi,
so as you said, so just for those who don't know, I'm the site investigator at the Sizwe Hospital in Johannesburg, South Africa, and I've acted both as a sub-investigator and a PI for both Nix and Xenix, and we'll also be working on several other TB Alliance trials. So I discussed this with Folu at length. And I think you'd have a big smile there because we argued it quite robustly. And I know that although the sub-analysis or the analysis showed that it's not significant by HIV status, I do think that this is perhaps a driver. The thing is that if you compare patients between Nix and Xenix, on Nix, the participants that had HIV were perhaps more likely to have thymidine analogs, so drugs such as AZT and some of the older drugs, which are likely to drive peripheral neuropathy, whereas on Xenix, less of them would have perhaps had it, just looking at comparing the two arms. Right. HIV in itself can also predispose to peripheral neuropathy, and I think that there's also something to be said for exposure to previous drug-resistant TB regimens and drugs such as INH and taururzidone, which can also drive peripheral neuropathy. So I think that there perhaps is something to be said for HIV status, and that perhaps we need to look at more specific things when we're doing analyses. I'm not sure. I think another thing that really came up was Folu was asking about the difference in prescription of pyridoxine between different countries. And although it seems like the pathophys of peripheral neuropathy with linezolid is mitochondrial and is potentially not actually helped by pyridoxine, I suspect that a lot of the South African sites were using pyridoxine anyway, just because that is something that we're used to using when we give INH and taururzidone. And so a lot of people using the BPAL regimen are using pyridoxine anyway. And I wonder, Folu, if you've had a chance to look at that to compare pyridoxine use between the different regions?
Yeah, we're still working on that, but we've kind of, what I've done is to ask investigators really in the different regions, are there differences in the use of pyridoxine? So like in Georgia, I think I spoke to Lali and then Nestani. I'm not sure if they're on the line. And then they do use pyridoxine. And I think Lali actually even sent me a paper that shows that higher dose pyridoxine, I think it was 10 versus 25. So the 25 milligrams actually had more impact in preventing peripheral neuropathy compared to 10 milligrams. So it's still something that we're looking at, and yeah, I guess.
And in the South African drug-resistant TB program, we're using upwards of 100 milligrams.
Okay.
So we don't actually know, is more really better at those levels? We're not sure. And then, of course, there is a good chance that because there are substantial genetic differences between the populations, that could perhaps also account for it. And if that is the dominant reason, then, that would be difficult to figure out. But yeah, it would be wonderful to hear from investigators from all the different sites to see how they account for different peripheral neuropathy levels.
Okay. All right, I'm looking at the time. Thanks a lot, Pauline. I appreciate your feedback. So I'm looking at the time, but maybe in the Q&A discussion, I would really appreciate if anybody has any thoughts on this, because it's quite interesting and you can't ignore it. Okay, so if you look at myelosuppression, there was really no difference between nothing really stands out that much between the different regions, but again, we're still looking into this. In terms of optic neuropathy, it was 2 in South Africa, 2 in Georgia, Moldova, so I don't think there's any difference in terms of optic neuropathy, but again, we are looking at this. With regards to linezolid dose interruptions, reductions, or discontinuations, basically linezolid modifications, that's what this slide shows by treatment arm, and it's due to this data is any linezolid dose modification due to any cause. And what we see here is that there is a higher number of linezolid dose modification in the 1200 milligram arm compared to 600 milligram arms. Especially, you can see that this is quite high, 51.5% of patients in the 1200 milligrams 26 weeks arm. So this is another Kaplan-Meier curve, and it shows time in days to the first linezolid dose modification due to a treatment emergent adverse event. So this is everything, all the treatment emergent adverse events. We've asked for the data to be stratified so that we can have 2 different curves to show time to first linezolid dose modification due to myelosuppression, and a separate one due to peripheral neuropathy, so that we can see the data better. But that is still pending, and I will share it once it's available, because that will be interesting. But regardless, you can see here that the y-axis shows proportion of patients with linezolid dose modification due to treatment adverse event. And again, the x-axis is a timestamp in the study. The 2 vertical red lines indicates the 9 and 26 weeks time point. So what we see here is that overall, what we see is that about 32%, 25%, 14%, and 14% of patients in the 1200 milligram 26 weeks, 1200 milligrams 9 weeks, 600 milligrams 26 weeks, and 600 milligrams 29 weeks arms, respectively, had linezolid dose modification, which again shows some kind of relationship with the higher the linezolid dose, the lower, the higher your opportunity, the higher the chance that something, either myelosuppression or optic neuropathy or peripheral neuropathy, will lead to a linezolid dose modification. And also of interest is that in all the cases of linezolid dose modification due to adverse events, it occurred within the first 8 to 9 weeks for all the different arms except for the 1200 milligrams 26 weeks. Which majorly occurred 2 to 3 months time point, which is similar to what we saw in Xenix for myelosuppression and peripheral neuropathy. Again, we need to look more into this data, and I will provide that as soon as I have it. Maybe during the next time we have a presentation together. So this is my last slide. Normally at this stage, I would have asked for thoughts. What do you think? How will this impact your use of linezolid in your different countries? But I'm also, again, I'm looking at the time, but we can talk about it in the Q&A, aspect of the presentation. So any conclusion is that the results support observed efficacy of BPAL from Xenix across all the 4 arms. There appears to be lower adverse events of note with lower doses and or shorter duration of linezolid. The 1200 milligrams 26 weeks had more adverse events. It had more neuropathy. And again, like I mentioned, all the 4 cases of optic neuropathy occurred in that arm. Reduced doses and a shorter duration of linezolid than the 1200 milligrams 26 weeks appears to have high efficacy and improved safety. And then again, additional analysis is pending. So we have a ZeNix result dissemination plan, which includes this presentation. Special thanks, as always, to all the patients enrolled in the trials, to our wonderful investigators and site staff, and to the funders of the Paternity trials, the DSMC, the CAB, C members, and everybody. So thank you. And I look forward to your questions.
Thank you so much, Folu. We already have a lot of questions written into the Q&A function, so thank you everyone for typing your questions in here. I'm going to pause right now just to highlight a couple of these questions for Folus to answer live, and then we'll move on. Any questions that we can't get to right now, I will refer back to right after our next presentation when we have a little bit more time for Q&A. But just to get us started, Folu, we have a question from a partner in Spain, Laia Ruiz-Mingote, related to the CD4 counts of HIV co-infected patients that were enrolled, and what was the limit of CD4 count to be included in this trial?
If I remember correctly, I think it was 100 compared to Nix. Pauline, please, I need to be sure. I have 100 in my mind. Yeah. Okay.
Yes, it was 100.
It was 100. Okay, right. So that's a simple answer. It was 100 millimeter cube. Yeah.
Great.
Okay.
Thank you. I want to just highlight one other question from Dr. Karen Upton in South Africa. What was the timing of the optic neuropathy for the 4 participants that received the 1200 milligram 6-month arm?
It's a good, I think it was between 4 to 6 months, which was similar to what we saw in Nix. We are also trying to get a Kaplan-Meier curve of time to first incidence of the adverse event, that is peripheral neuropathy, myelosuppression, optic neuropathy, so that we can also see how that looks like. And we are also working on that. Thank you for your questions, and Karen. Yeah, we're looking into it.
Great. One last question I want to take care of right now. This is from Catalina Navarro, related to testicular effects in males related to pretomanid. I just wanted to say that we did have a full presentation on the upcoming BPA-MC Siemens study at our last community engagement forum, and we can share those slides with you, but I just wanted to give Folu you an opportunity to incorporate that into your talk now, and then we can move on to other questions after.
Right. So it's a good question. We get it all the time. So as a quick background, the reason why we have testicular toxicity concern is due to preclinical data where we saw signs of testicular toxicity in male rats. Again, they were in rodents. But when you move to higher animals like primates, like in the monkeys, we saw no sign of testicular toxicity. But since we've already seen it in rodents, we still went further to do, I think it's part of the requirements to do further analysis and tests on this concern. So what we have done is that we have also evaluated male hormones. We have looked at 4 studies where we used pretomanid containing regimens between 4 to 6 months duration. There were 4 studies: NC002, NC005, NC006, NC008, and we looked at the 4 male hormones, because if there's an effect on fertility, it does affect those male hormones. Testosterone. So the 4 hormones are testosterone, luteinizing hormone. Those hormones tend to go down if you're having issues with male fertility. And then there's FSH and LH, which tends to go up if you're having issues with male fertility. We did look at this combined for all the different studies, And what we saw was that there was apparently no impact of preterm containing regimen on any of the male hormones. Actually, many of the patients were hypogonadal because they were sick at baseline, and this actually improved when it got better. So that result will be presented at the union later in October. So that is quite reassuring. Also, we also do a paternity survey, which is that patients, male patients in our previous studies who took preterminate, we are checking to see how many of them either during the study or after the study were able to father children. And then so far we've identified 36 male patients already who fathered children. Again, which is reassuring. And finally, as part of a FDA requirement, we are also conducting a semen study, which is we're actually going to enroll patients and treat them with BPMZ, collect their semen at baseline, look at the semen counts, and then check it at several points, especially at week 44, to see if there's been any impact on of preterminate on the semen count. And then that study right now is about to start, and we should have a readout hopefully within the next year or so.
Great. Thank you so much, Folu. Because of time, I'm going to suggest that we move on to our next presentation. Folu, if you could stop sharing your screen, I will reshare from my end. Again, thank you everyone who is writing questions into the chat. Please continue to do so. We'll take some time after our next presentation to hear from some of you directly and answer your questions. Thanks. Oksana, I'd like to introduce you, Oksana Bertiano from SMIT in Moldova, to hear about community engagement strategies for the ZeNix trial.
Thank you, first of all, and thank you for everyone for joining this webinar, important webinar, the second, and I think it's going to become a good practice of talking of making the knowledge available for people to be more and more aware and be able to give reasonable and meaningful input into the research in the future. So if we're speaking about a community engagement strategy, I would definitely say that TB Alliance during ZeNix clinical trial in Moldova offered a very important opportunity for us as civil society to build and to draft a document which will help us as a community representative, as civil society representative, to bring a basic and genuine knowledge, which is absolutely important for us as civil society. As you may know, actually the research and development concept and the engagement of communities is a new phenomenon, I would say, in this region. And I'm referring to the former Soviet Republic. The 15 republics. So I think it's absolutely to be acknowledged. It's absolutely important, and I would like again to acknowledge that TB Alliance offered us this opportunity to draft a document, which was drafted in 2 languages, in Russian and Romanian, and we disseminated this document as a basic framework for communities and civil society in the countries to understand what is community engagement, what is a community advisory board, what are the roles and what are the principles of community engagement. Another important point would be that actually this engagement during ZeNix clinical trial as well let us be as flexible as we could in our intentions to increase the awareness of communities regarding to community engagement. If we are speaking shortly about what we are doing as organization, I would say that we use, first of all, to be experienced, because mostly all of our people who are engaged in our organization have experience with TB, either direct as TB patients or people who have someone in their family experiencing TB. We, taking this into consideration, we promote peer approach in connecting people to services as something very, very crucial. We encourage cooperation between different levels of politicians, local government, so primary health service provider and communities and civil society as their representatives. As well, we are focusing on issues related to human rights and try at every possible moment to represent the voices of people affected at different public levels. As well, we, as a new activities, which already is not very new since 2016, we're engaging in community and research during STREAM clinical trial and ZeNix trial. Next slide, please. So just to give you an idea, and I'm not going to repeat, this is the first ever trials that have put a very big focus for engaging communities in our countries, and I think even in our region. So that's very important to see. And what Follow said, that they expanded their sites and engaged already countries from this region, not only as historically were used, but only the countries in South Africa, but as well in the country and regions in South Africa, but as well countries in our European region, including Russia, Ukraine, Moldova, and Georgia. Next slide, please. Just to give a background and to complete what Follow said, and what is important for us to acknowledge and to know that TB in all forms must be treated with a combination of drugs. That's all. This is a message, a key message for us as community representatives, while we are trying to advocate for correct regimens, not advocate for one drug, but promoting the use of correct and very efficient TB treatment regimens. Just information to confirm what Follow said, that ZeNix is actually a success of NIX-TB, a trial on which we founded and which was at the foundation of the WHO recommendation. Next slide, you can even see this recommendation of WHO recommending the treatment, the PAL regimen, and there is a specific recommendation for this to be advanced in the region and to be encouraged for countries to implement BPAL regimen during operational research to collect more and more data, which will inform the treatments and protocol in the countries. Next slide, please. Principles which we have included in our community strategy for research and development are very known things, but important to be repeated. It's very good for the country, which has a community advisory board, to have very clear and achievable goals, to develop cultural competence, to put a focus on transparency, and to make the research processes, starting from the selecting the speaker question to result dissemination, as transparent as possible. This transparency actually contributes to developing and fostering partnership and trust between communities and the research team, and eventually between between healthcare providers and communities, as those who are benefiting from different technological advances. Providing and promoting capacity building, this is a focus which we as organization consider is important, because otherwise we cannot contribute efficiently, let's say, to promoting any efficient regimen. And I think it's right. We can ask from the civil society to promote a particular regimen or advocate for a particular drug unless they are well informed about what is going on, but every information which is available is understood by the civil society at their level. And again, the final conclusion, of course, for these principles, I would say that it's a long-term journey. It's not so easy to make a good connection, to build partnership and trust in a short term. This is a long process, and even after already 4 years of community engagement in our country, I would say that there is much more room to improve things and to make things work better and quicker. The way the civil society wants things to be changed. Next slide, please. Community advisory board, just to mention the roles of a genuine community advisory boards, is to improve communication, develop treatment and research literacy, which is in line with those principles of a community engagement strategy. Give community participants the opportunity to provide input. That's essential for 100%. And advocate for implementing the results of a clinical trial at national level. I think which turns to be absolutely difficult, and we do acknowledge that having a technology developed at a research level does not mean that it will be available very quickly at the national level. That's why I'm saying that's important to engage more and more civil society in this process. Next slide, please. Graphic review of strategy, just to give you a general understanding of what we put as key messages in the strategies, having two objectives for the strategy. As study participants, CAB members, and civil society have a potential and skills to effectively influence policy and meaningfully participate in the research and development process. And the second objective is government and public support research and development activities to develop effective intervention to overcome drug-resistant forms in the National Action Plan. And there are some specific interventions, I would say, which are mentioned under every objective. Next slide. As key messages, because I really want to do it very quickly for us, especially for communities, to understand that participation in a clinical and applied scientific or operational research, including community-based research, contributes to building credible evidence from the perspective of people who are affected. Interaction with PIs, principal investigators in the countries, TB program and TB HIV, different technical platforms, technical working groups, partnering with organization to increase awareness and research literacy among different specific populations depending on the countries. Again, increasing awareness even for the national health leaders, because it's not necessary that everyone is aware about what is going on. And even parliamentarians to create change and build mutual trust. Information, education, and advocacy events help influence public opinion. Community engagement and research give legitimacy, and that's crucial, to a study and facilitate critical engagement with communities regarding their expectation from a study. Another important point is for us to understand that actually community members as patients, as civil society representatives, have an unique expertise on different areas. And in this way, using this expertise, we can improve policies once we are using the right techniques. And as you already mentioned, that we are going to learn a lot of very interesting and important advocacy skills in this way. And the other point to remember is that community engagement and research is ongoing long-term commitment. That's not something that will happen very quickly. On the next slide, just to show you some very, let's say, important, I would say, glimpses from our work that we are doing and continuing doing in research and development. First of all, visiting our patients and in facilities, talking and trying to fortify our experience with the PIs, continuing our work even during the COVID pandemic. And of course, what is the most important, but thanks to TB Alliance, we actually managed to do these quarterly meetings and visits to facilities in different regions of our country, which is very important for us, because in this way we're keeping our messages connected, we're keeping the dialogues with patients who are affected at this moment, keep us every time in tune, I would say. And this is one thing we are proud of. So I thank you so much. And if there are questions, I will definitely respond. Just to add that during the, like a specific interventions, we are now planning and we are working very closely with 3 countries, with Ukraine, Georgia, and the Russian Federation, to try to do a kind of evaluation of the situation of the pre-XDR and XDR in the countries, and to find out patients' opinion about the opportunities which are available at the national levels regarding the treatment for drug-resistant forms of TB, to see how we can use this evidence in informing the national governments in the countries. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Oksana. That was a really helpful presentation, and it's, just to represent TB Alliance, it is one of our top priorities to make sure that there is support, resources, guidance, technical assistance, and as much partnership as we can provide to country level civil society around our clinical trial sites to develop the kind of initiatives that Oksana was presenting that they've done in Moldova. I know that we are running, we're likely to run into time issues, but I do want to pause and just take a moment for some Q&A. I know we still have a lot of written questions, and we'll try and address some of those with written answers. I would like to invite Dato from Georgia. If you want to raise your hand, I know you had a question you wanted to ask. And you can go ahead and unmute yourself.
Hello, it's a pleasure to be on this meeting and hear your experiences and views today. Yes, the questions we had from our side, it was actually 2 of them. And one of them was regarding the introduction of PPAL regimen. Actually, like when we have communications with patients, there are some questions they might pose that we don't have answer to. We are interested if it is possible to create some kind of brochures regarding this case, like what patients what may be patients' questions, and write down these questions, and maybe we could have some kind of brochures with answers to introduce it to them. And the second question we had was when there is some kind of life situations and co-infections, and other diseases that patients might have, might happen during treatment, like HIV, COVID-19, maybe diabetes or pregnancy. What happens during this case? Does some kind of doses of medications get lower? Or what are we doing during these situations? These are the 2 questions we had from our side.
Thank you so much, Dr. That's great to hear. I will just address your first question initially, and then maybe ask Oksana if you'd like to also weigh in on the second question. I'll move to Folu to answer that, and I may incorporate a question from the Q&A chat as well that I think is relevant to that. But related to materials that you can share with other colleagues, certainly, the dissemination of the results that we're doing now, all of this information will be shared widely with you, other CAB members and other partners we would be happy to work with you to adapt these into materials that you can use more easily to share this information again and answer specific questions that you may be getting locally. Our clinical team is also very willing to meet and discuss any specific questions that might be coming up from your community advisory board members or other community members as needed. I just wanted to see if Oksana might want to weigh in also from your experience in preparing some of these materials in partnership with your local PIs and research team, as well as sponsors like us.
Well, thank you, first of all, David, for the questions, and Stephanie for raising this point. Yes, I do think it's important, and we included in our community engagement strategy, first of all, the development of BPAL related, let's say, flyers, I would say, for people, so that at least partially using this material, that people who are taking following the BPAL regimen could have answers. And of course, as a way for people who are potential beneficiaries of this treatment regimen could have a look at the materials and understand what are the efficacy points, what are the outcomes of the BPAL regimen in the region and in the countries where the clinical trial has rolled out. So I think it's absolutely important, and it can be adjusted to the local context to make things relevant for people. So absolutely necessary to do.
Thank you, Oksana. Fulu, if we could move to Dato's second question related to treatments for trial participants of other comorbidities that may come up. And I want to combine this with a question we got in the chat about a potential situation where a participant may have to be discontinued on their linezolid. Is there still a completion of treatment with only the two drugs, bedaquiline and protominid, or would there be another plan for that participant?
Okay, thanks. So I think I need to just add to the first question about a brochure. So just a heads up that a site in South Africa, I think one of the investigators got a grant from, if I remember correctly, TB Reach to develop a BPAL implementation guideline, which would talk about the regimen, it talk about, importantly, about the adverse events and how to manage it. TB Alliance is supporting that process, and also actually Dr. Pauline Howell is also actively supporting that process in terms of writing, about how to manage the different adverse events based on the different drugs in the regimen. And the initial plan was for it to be South Africa centric, but I think the eventual plan is that once it's finalized, to get to all the different countries that are having operational research. So just a quick update on that. So for like doing the study or doing operational research, the patient is on BPAL, and then so either they have comorbidities or a new morbidity develops. As you know, HIV is not contraindicated. Diabetes in the protocol is only contraindicated if poorly controlled. But as you can imagine, tuberculosis is a very, very important, very deadly disease. So it will take a lot, which honestly, I can't think of any disease that will stop you from continuing a patient on treatment, unless there are some serious contraindications, drug interactions based on the disease of note. But we have not identified any reason why you will stop a patient's treatment due to a comorbidity. COVID, of course, you need to continue. Patients who have TB, they get worsened by the COVID infection. So it's important that you still continue the TB treatment regardless of if the patient has COVID. I think that's absolutely important. And I do remember an investigator actually asking if a patient can get vaccinated while on the regimen. Absolutely, absolutely. Please get vaccinated with COVID, even if you're on the BPAL regimen. The last question was if somebody has to discontinue their linezolid, that what is the plan? So if you remember, linezolid we have ability to modify linezolid, interrupt, or reduce or discontinue in total. So I do have data on linezolid dose discontinuations. So there were about 9% for patients out of 45, and about 9% discontinued the linezolid in the 1200 milligram 26 weeks, none in the 1200 milligrams 9 weeks, one patient out of 45 in the 600 milligram 26 weeks, which is about 2%, and none in the 600 milligrams 9 weeks discontinued linezolid. And when you discontinue linezolid, you continue with the remaining two. You continue with bedaquiline and pretomanid. But the only thing that in Xenix, we do encourage the sites to ensure that the patient takes at least 9 weeks in total of linezolid, even if there are pauses, but in total make sure the patient take 9 weeks. And in the Xenix study, maybe because the study was blinded, we actually had very high compliance rates. I mean, about over 80%, even in the 1200 or the 600 milligrams, took the linezolid according to the regimen, according to the protocol. So summary, you continue with the remaining two, bedaquiline and pretomanid if you stop linezolid. I hope that helps.
Thank you, Folu. Just want to check in with Dato if that helped to answer your question, and then also Victoria, who wrote that question in, if that was specifically helpful to your question. David, go ahead.
Thank you for your answers. It was it satisfied my interest. Thank you for that.
Thank you. Thank you for the question.
Great. I'm just going to take one more live question before we move on to access and introduction updates. Omar Zuma from Bagamoyo in Tanzania, if you would like to ask your question, please go ahead and raise your hand and I'll unmute you. You can go ahead and unmute yourself.
Hello.
Hi, Omar. Please go ahead.
Can you hear me? Hello. Yep. Thank you very much, Stephanie. And my question to follow is that, as you said, that there's a difference between South Africa, Georgia, Moldova, and Russia concerning the TAs. So my question is that before the treatment, do you consider for the food taken or any issue of alcohol or any other related drinks or food before treatment, or because the difference it seems that is big?
Yeah, it's a good question, Omar. So just to be clear, the difference in between the two different regions was really just peripheral neuropathy. And like Pauline also described, where there are different reasons why, or postulates why this could have happened. One thing we are looking into, and then this was an idea from our head of R&D, Eugene Sun. He also said we should check on the mean corpuscular volume, just to assess. It could be a difference in nutrition, vitamin B deficiencies, just to see if there's any difference between the South African region and the Eastern European region. And I've actually just requested our labs to try to generate that data so that we can analyze and see if we can have any reason to, maybe food or nutritional status could have been a reason why we have these differences. So yeah, we are looking into that, and then we will share that feedback once we get it.
Okay, thank you very much, Folu.
Thank you.
Great. Thank you, Folu. Thank you, everyone, for your questions. We'll continue another session of Q&A after the next segment. I'd like to introduce my colleague Asta Gupta from our market access team to give us an update on implementation and access to BPAL.
Thank you, Stephanie. Buenos dias, dobre dien, good day to everyone. I'm Asta Gupta, and as Stephanie mentioned, I'm here to give you an update on implementation and access of BPAL. But before I get into details, I'd like to briefly share with you the TB Alliance's philosophy around access. So at TBA, the access to the regimens we develop is coded into our mission, and we call it the AAA mandate. So we are committed to developing regimens that are by design amenable to be adopted, available, and affordable. And we work with partners to ensure that that happens. So we are grateful to our collaborators and multiple partners, too many really to name here, who have helped us in ensuring access to our pediatric fixed dose combination regimen for DSTB in more than 100 countries. We're now seeing a nice buildup of collaboration similarly with the new regimen BPAL. We've developed BPAL as a regimen, and in that process, we've helped transform the approach to development of TB treatment. In that earlier, there was development of single drugs, which would just be added on to older regimens as compared to a whole new regimen being developed at one go. So we've been building a pipeline of new TB compounds, and of course, there's a lot more innovation required if we are to further simplify the treatment. All this, of course, in partnership with a vast number of collaborators. Next slide, please. So we have, to access any regimen, there are multiple pillars, and I want to highlight some of the key elements here and then talk about them in the coming slides. So firstly, to ensure widespread availability of Pretominid, TB Alliance has entered into agreements with multiple high-quality, low-cost manufacturers. We have a global commercialization agreement with Viatris, which was erstwhile Mylan, and also with two other manufacturers, McLeod's in India and Hongxi in China. In the last 18 months, Viatris has obtained 12 regulatory approvals, and I'll give you the highlights of that on the next slide. While 14 countries are now implementing BPAL under research conditions, Viatris has supplied to more than 30 countries and provided 1,600 treatment courses to date. Most of these in low and middle income countries with high TB burden, but also in the US, Pretominid has been available and in use since 2019. The regimen components, betaquilin, Pretominid, and linezolid, are available through GDF for as less as $800 for the full treatment course for the whole regimen BPAL. And if we compare that to alternate regimens, it's the other regimens would cost anywhere between 2 to 10 times as much per patient. In countries where regulatory approval is not yet in place, Viatris operates a named patient access program, and details of that are available on this website, accesspretominid.com. It's also, some of it is also available on the TB Alliance website. I'll talk about that more in the coming slides. A detailed update of the global regulatory status. Viatris has obtained approvals from 12 regulatory agencies, including WHO pre-qualification. Another 18 countries where dossiers have been filed, and we're awaiting approvals, hopefully in the coming few months. Next slide, please. So as you all know, the guidelines were published in June 2020, where BPAL was recommended under operational research conditions. Since then, we've been working directly or indirectly with several countries with the help of partners to support operational research for BPAL. And there are several initiatives which have helped implementation, such as TB Reach, USAID, WHO, TDR, and COICA as funders. Special call out to two of these initiatives, which are really in the most advanced stages. One is the USAID supported BCAP in South Africa, and the other is the Lift TB initiative. And a few details on Lift TB in the coming slide. This is a 5-year project spanning 7 countries. So Kyrgyzstan, Uzbekistan, and Ukraine in Eastern Europe, and Myanmar, Philippines, Indonesia, and Vietnam in Southeast Asia. This project is focused on providing technical assistance to speed up operational research initially, and then later other activities which are necessary for scale up and adoption of the regimen. The project is also intended to help collection of data from operational research on a rolling basis to support global policy development. TB Alliance is implementing the Lift TB project with the help of 2 core partners, ITRC and KNCB. Next, thank you. So this is a detailed snapshot of which countries have initiated operational research of BPAL under different project heads, Lift TB, TB Reach, and other local donors. I'll just go on to the next slide to give you more details. Right, so here is 5 countries which have actively started enrolling patients in research for BPAL regimens. And you'll see in this, Ukraine is the furthest along. It was the first to start in October 2020. And you have the maximum number of patients enrolled in that country. The rest of the countries in this slide have started in the first or second quarter of this year. So we are hoping, of course, the numbers will grow in the coming few weeks and months. Overall, till now, 130 patients have enrolled in 3 continents, Africa, Eastern Europe, and Southeast Asia. And this is a list of another 5 countries where BPAL operational research is imminent and expected to start somewhere between now and the end of the year. So between the list of countries in the previous slide and this one, we would have about 1,300 to 1,400 patients on operational research across these 3 diverse regions in the world. And besides this, there are some countries like Ghana and Laos, which are conducting other operational research with different all-oral MDR regimens, including BPAL. So we would have a few more patients enrolled on BPAL in those countries as well. So we have very recently developed a country reference guide, which is available on our website. And this highlights the pathways available for access to Predominate in different countries. So the page shows which countries have, let's say, regulatory approvals, or which ones are under pending approvals. Which countries can access Predominate through the Named Patient Access Program, which ones are listed in the GDF catalog and are able to get the access price through GDF, and which are the countries which currently have operational research ongoing. Details of this can be found on our website, which was mentioned here, and we'd be happy to take on any questions that you may have on the information available here. So that was from me, but I would definitely like to take a moment to acknowledge our donors, without whose support our work in development and delivery of Pretominate would not have been possible. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you so much, Asta. Just related to the operational research studies and implementation timelines, I just wanted to see if there were any clarifying questions just for Asta before we move on. Okay. Great. If I'm not seeing you, we will have another opportunity for Q&A after our next presentation as well. So let me introduce my colleague Nell Godoy, also from our market access team, who's going to give us a little bit more information about civil society engagement in EPAL introduction.
Great, thank you, Stephanie. Hello again, everyone. My name is Nell Godoy. I'm a director of market access at TB Alliance here. So today I'm tag teaming with Luis Zepeda-Ten from TB People Philippines to talk about TB Alliance's new initiatives to support civil society organizations at the country level in their advocacy efforts. So I am just going to first present sort of an overview of this initiative, then I'll hand it over to Louise to talk about her project in the Philippines. So the overarching objective of this initiative is to promote TB treatment literacy and raise awareness of the new treatment options that become available, including BPAL. This is among TB survivors and advocates and other affected communities, so that they can use the information to empower their peers, other people with TB, their families, caregivers, and other affected communities who may be at a higher risk of infection, to make informed decisions about their TB treatment and care, and also to support local advocacy efforts to widen access to new treatment options as quickly as possible. Overall, the initiative in each country supports a training of leading or emerging advocates on TB treatment. The core contents in general include, both WHO and national TB treatment guidelines for DRTB treatment, comparing different aspects of each treatment options, such as who's eligible for what type of treatment, drug regimens, what drugs are in these regimens, treatment duration for each type of treatment regimen, and pill count, and so forth. The training also covers a drug susceptibility testing. Obviously, this is really important to determine what kind of TB people have and identify the right treatment regimen, as well as patient monitoring, potential adverse events associated with different types of TB drugs that people with TB would be taking. And then obviously the content can be further expanded to cover other topics depending on the needs and interest in each country. And I think later on, Louis can kind of talk a little bit more about what they plan to do in the Philippines as well. And the training materials for this are initially adapted from the version of the training materials developed for healthcare workers, but using non-medicalized language where appropriate. We actually have engaged with a leading TB clinician from the Philippines as a consultant for adaptation. And she's been working with Louis and her team to adapt the training materials that are, easier to understand for the community, that's relevant for the community interest, to make sure that materials are really relevant and informative for the advocate communities. The training in each country in general will be conducted by the consultants, as well as other technical experts from the respective NTPs and other partner organizations with participation from TBA. Who would be appropriate is also going to be determined by individual advocate partner that would be leading the project on the ground. Then initiative also supports dissemination activities of the information that would be led by the advocates and their teams trained through this program, and that are designed to reach the audience that the advocates themselves select through the type of channels and avenues that they think are most effective and accessible by the local communities for each local context. So we first launched this initiative in the Philippines in May, which is led by Louis. And then we just launched the second initiative in Indonesia a couple of weeks ago, led by Lucy Atilawati from Japeti. We're hoping Lucy will share an update on her project in the future webinars. And then in addition, we're exploring opportunities for similar program in Ukraine and India this year. So this is kind of a generic description of the scope of the initiative, but what the project actually looks like in each country would really vary by country, because our advocate partner in each country really leads the design and execution of the program on the ground to really, meet the local needs and specific situations. So now I would like to invite Louise Pedersen, who is herself a TB survivor and currently president of TB People Philippines, to talk about her project in the Philippines.
Hi, Naoko. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you, Louise. Perfect.
Can you see me? Okay, good day, everyone. Thank you for this opportunity to share the work of my organization. Again, I'm Louis Teng. I'm a tuberculosis meningitis survivor. I'm a former architect, and in 2009, this experience left me totally blind. After I took another degree on a master's in international affairs, I started doing country representation. Year 2012, I joined numerous global TB groups, and it helped me assess the need to create my own group. I established TB People Philippines March 2020 last year. So this was before the pandemic. And this was actually a request I got from our TB People colleagues to establish the first country chapter of TB People in Asia. Same time, I made my promise after our WHO Korea Declaration on the creation of national platforms to make the community be included on service delivery, demand generation, and monitoring of evaluation. So my group is composed of TB survivors that aims to solve social, economic, and legal barriers of this disease. TB People started to participate on sub-TWGs of NTP after I made the introductions, after our legalization. And this is to show the intention to represent the community. We were constantly invited to all sub-TWGs, consultative meetings of the NTP to assist the country. And actually, most of the CSOs in the country are not registered. The allotment for the community is still on its early stages. This is why nobody, the mobilization of CSOs on TB projects is very minimal. But for TB People, we started volunteerism on monitoring of program implementation to all servicing facilities. There is lacking people on the ground to actually do these monitoring. I teach my network how to do verification of persons with TB issues and concerns. We do intervention, provide needed information of our persons with TB, and release evidences and propose solutions directly to NTP for both clinical and non-clinical issues. I created focus groups for each category of treatment, where my staff is able to provide daily advices With the help of our partners and guidance from NTP, same time, we support the campaign #TB-Free-Philippines. So this is where I do regular media engagements, like radio and television interviews. Now we are regularly invited to other technical working groups, like M&E and also digital tools. So NTP sees our vital work in the lapses of the TB program. And so for this Lift TB project, I was introduced to the project, I think around the end of 2020. And I was able to attend the launching and the training of trainers for the OR sites. When I was consulted for the effective strategy of what I think would work, I strongly recommended to improve the access to information and chose to utilize the effective resource persons. And this is for my dream team. My group is composed of, again, DS and DRTB survivors, health workers and nurses, and family of the persons with TB. And then all of them with different stories to share. I'm very lucky to have reached 700 persons with TB being handled by my staff. And our online platform has actually reached 1,000 followers. That's why it's very easy for me to select the team, the dream team, and to put up our soon to be viewed information dissemination platform. I am very fortunate also that the one giving the explanation to this project and the one who will provide the training materials to be simplified by us was my own mentor and doctor back in TDF. And this is Dr. Mamal Calapio. So I initially created a core team for the simplification of the clinical materials, but eventually I decided all of the 12 should join the assessment because I believe these kinds of information takes time to be studied. So during the group discussions, some of my representatives mentioned the importance of TB people as a recognized partner. They shared some instances of some sites questioning their involvement on other TB projects that they were doing and the possible access to the facility for these advocacy activities might be very difficult. So I quickly communicated this to NTP. I got recommendations on how to address these issues. And yes, this is the importance of engaging NTP early, making them notified of these TB projects, checking the parameters of how my group can perform, and the endorsement of NTP can provide smooth communications to all audiences, may it be government or the public. So I thoroughly explained to them the scope of work we have with TB Alliance, and NTP became very clear regarding our intention to convey these materials the holistic way, including those with disability like me, and we promise to be aligned with the health promotions of the country on TB. According to NTP, this was the first time that the community will be involved, and the creation of these materials for the advocates to be used is actually also first time. So it has always been job aids for health workers, and that's why maybe the comprehension provided by these health workers to the community is also lacking. We ended up agreeing that this project might actually create the impact on the needed advocacy for finding the 2.5 million missing Filipinos with tuberculosis before 2020. This is actually our promise during the tuberculosis high-level meeting in New York. So discussions were then started from the documents reviewed by Doc Mammal, reviewed by TBA also, and then the Philippine context was inserted to the global setting, and the opinions of my team on these collaborated items regarding the providing of complete information from the STB to DRTB to XDR to digital tools were openly accepted by all of the stakeholders. So we believe that it's time for Filipinos to be equipped with this disease in the program. We have finally, thankfully, set the training of trainers in August next week. And the program will be participated by NTP and WHO. And it's also going to be presented by Doc Mammal and the training team of the Global Fund. So all of my representatives in me shall be given certification as a trainer. It's giving us the opportunity to make more knowledgeable survivors like us. So after the training, regional representatives will develop digital materials, key digital brochures and flyers in several dialects. This is to reach more of the unreached, and everything will be uploaded in our own website, tvpeople.ph, which will show the overall explanation of the project, background information of each representative. Video links will be inserted in their specific pages so people can easily know them and reach out to them directly because they can relate because of the used dialect. Their videos will be created with a little bit of storytelling in connection to the topics that they will be discussing, and all materials will be announced in our Facebook page in accordance to their dialect also. All materials, of course, shall be checked by the Health Promotions Bureau of NTP, so for the proper usage of the logo of Department of Health and all the algorithms that we're supposed to follow. This information strategy has always been requested by the community due to the lacking comprehension. This is the needed request provision anywhere in the country. So Filipinos can easily log into Facebook, even if they don't have money for food, they can actually access Facebook with the use of free data. So they're always looking for answers to ask for help. And we know that Filipinos will always look for information wherever they may find it. That is why my organization page was flooded with questions regarding the difference between TB and COVID. So even with the lockdown, we were able to assist and enroll 10 to 20 persons with TB to the treatment. This is per day, and everything is virtual. Our platform will be anticipating all reactions and to be reported both to TB Alliance and NTP. And there's so much to be done with our online tools. As long as we provide accessible information, more now that we plan to create informative, entertaining content provided by our representatives. This is to show a different side of TB information. So we are very happy to hear also that the GF team both agrees to our vision of finally making the survivors one of the mentors for the TB program as well. So I hope our experiences and strategies can give guidance to other countries and civil societies to be change makers as well and empower all persons with TB. And after surviving this disease also for 14 years now, I'm finally doing my part in designing and creating this guidance tool to effectively educate the community to have healthier lives. So thank you so much, TB Alliance, for this opportunity, and good day to everyone again.
Thank you so much, Louis, and thank you, Noriko. Noriko, I just want to ask you if you have any other questions for things that you would like to have shared about this particular initiative in the Philippines as an example of the work that you're going to be doing.
I think that, Louis covered it really well, but Louis, I just wanted to ask if you might want to share some of the topics that you and your team have been discussing to feature on YouTube videos or flyers. What are some of the topics that, that's going to be featured in these videos?
There. When Dr. Mamal gave us the topics, it started from, of course, the WHO guidelines, the introductions. Of course, the STB is not yet in the content, but after the Philippine team told us that we need to do these inclusions for the introductions of the STB, the setting of screening, diagnosing, and then also for the different regimens being used in the country, we were able to really see the way Filipinos would easily understand the global and Philippine content. And we were able to really identify specific items that Filipinos are really waiting to hear, like how do I identify a DOTS facility in any urban or rural places. So these are the things that we have to really present to them so that they can easily understand. And all of the DPAL content up to the management and monitoring became very, very easy for us to convey once we were able to discuss what were our experiences before, and then how we think Filipinos will be able to digest it properly. So we really saw the effort of the Philippine team to start with TB 101 before you go to the DRTB and XDR. So that's the way we understand it. I think that is also the way it will be effective for the general population.
Mm-hmm. So it's now a very comprehensive program. Great.
Great. Thank you
Back
both
to you,
so
Stephanie.
much. Thank you so much. That gives us some time to really focus in on Q&A for a while, which is great. I'd like to thank all of our speakers for sharing this important information and providing these updates. Thanks also to participants who have been continually submitting questions in the Q&A. Many of the questions have been answered in written format, so we will share all of those answers out to everyone along with the slides and the recordings post-meeting. I just wanted to give an opportunity to one of our partners in Russia, Alexander Chebin. You submitted a written question related to participants in clinical trials that may be suffering with other substance addictions and how those participants might be managed if they fail treatment. And I just wanted to give you an opportunity to elaborate on that question because I think others may be interested in hearing this as part of a discussion as well. You can go ahead and unmute yourself. Alex, you can unmute yourself. There you go.
Yes. Hello, everyone. I'm here. Thank you very much for the opportunity to be with you. And my question, what kind of support do you have in your countries when people have such problem as alcoholic or drug addiction? What kind of social support works with relatives and
Great. Thank you.
Something else?
Yeah, thank you so much, Alex. I think this is a really important question.
Thank you so much for your experience.
Of course. We do have an answer also from Folu related to, typical practice of clinical trial protocol and inclusion criteria that there, will need to be a support network for participants, all participants that are enrolled in clinical trials. And if there are any specific identified situations that would make it difficult for participants to be enrolled in a study, that may be an inclusion indication that they may not be able to be enrolled. But I just wanted to further address this question and ask if anyone else on the call, either a provider or someone from another country that would like to share experience related to this, in particular related to providing support systems for trial participants. Please raise your hand and I'd be happy to hear that experience from you.
If I may, Stephanie.
Thank you, Oksana.
Just to give the perspective of our approaches and for people who experience different substance abuse. So, well, the fact is actually that when I think it's a regional phenomena for our region, on people are focusing and giving a lot of focus on addictions of people while not putting an accent for getting the people treated. So and that's the problem, I would say sincerely, because when we are speaking with the primary health care, the providers, the specialized care providing TB treatment, we are actually saying that the focus of a TB specialist is to treat TB, and it's very difficult for a primary health care actually to change the behavior, because it's already connected to changing the behavior, and in this case different approaches are needed. I think at country levels, in different countries, there are different approaches in treating addictions, and in this way, for us as civil society who are working with this kind of people, we just need to know the existing mechanism, the existing support services in the country, and try to refer the people to these services. But the main problem, the main purpose of people who are engaged in supporting a TB patient is actually to treat tuberculosis, and that's conceptual. So this is something we in our region are trying to make people understand, because when we are speaking with a patient with different problems, you should focus and you should understand and try to teach try to treat the TB problem first. And additionally, if there are supporting services, just to refer the person and to see how you can handle the situation. Focusing mainly on trying to treat the addiction and not treat the TB is absolutely a wrong approach to be taken in this situation. This is our experiences, and we manage to understand when we are approaching, and you are just communicating with people, and you are putting the right focus for to solve a specific problem. That's the right point to be. And of course, in this, like a community civil society organization, you should know all the available supporting services in the region, so that you can refer a person to the right services to continue and try to focus to solve the other issues beyond TB. Thank you.
Thank you, Oksana.
Thank you, Stephanie and Oksana, for responding that. I think it is a very important issue. We have this concrete situation when we come to the pragmatic life, like when we introduce and we are discussing the introduction of BPAL and other regimens. We have to deal with real life. It's not a clinical study on ideal conditions or ideal situations, but even in the clinical studies, we see that, but we have to manage, as what you very correctly said, Oksana. We have to manage and to see how can we integrate and incorporate these aspects. So that's what we spoke in the beginning, to have more a person-centered approach and a human rights approach within the studies, so that we have a more realistic, pragmatic implementation. I would like to ask, Valeria just dropped. I would like to, for example, to ask Valeria to speak about that, but I think she's having communication problems today. She was in and out, but she was dealing with the same, the Simplicity trial participants were mostly with some drug use, and that's important that the Simplicity, that the TB Alliance studies also incorporate this aspect, which is very positive. On other clinical studies before, we haven't seen that. I mean, people with drug abuse or any substance abuse would be rejected and put outside. So this is very important. This is already a step ahead. But I would like to also ask Dudu, if Valeria is not here. I just saw that she...
We have Valeria. Yeah.
Do we have Valeria?
Yep.
Where's...
Okay. You have me now.
Okay, wonderful.
Because I had huge problems to connect today. due to a huge rain and without electricity, but I'm on. So you are talking about people using drugs and making TB treatment, isn't it? As we have a lot of that. And we have the worst drug possible in Rio de Janeiro, which is the crack. And this is the drug that really make people sleep during the visits and don't come and stop therapy and be back to treat again. So it's not the same as other drugs. Marijuana, for example, and even cocaine or other pills that you take to go to parties are quite different. So this is my impression in what I saw in reporting in Simplicity TB study in Rio de Janeiro.
Yeah, thank you, Valeria. We also had a question from Dudu. Do we have Dudu?
Sorry, I'm just gonna unmute you. Can you raise your hand, Dudu, so I can unmute your microphone? There we go. Thank you. You can unmute yourself now.
Hello, can you hear me now?
Yes, loud and clear.
Yes. Yeah, I'm in Devon here. Yes, we're talking about meaningful engagement so that we can effectively put the people we represent up to date with the study and all that, so that they can help us if we try to influence the policies. But what happens when we meet like this doesn't happen on the ground where we work with people. I think we must get a very diplomatic ways and means to deal with that. What the policies of the study, your GPPs, your GCPs, to work high up there and down on the ground where we work at the sites. Those stages are too different. We talk nice if we are in the meetings like this, but in the practice at the sites, no, it's not the same. The trial staff and management, they can easily 1,000,001 reasons to decline every proposal. You see, we must get ways and means, or sometimes skills, to put ourselves so that we can be heard. Thank you. Because we represent the communities who have power. In South Africa, we have a bad tendency of doing things otherwise if we are not satisfied.
Thank you so much for that comment. And I will just try to address this first, and then I welcome Ezio and Oksana or others from the call to weigh in also. You're absolutely right. I mean, I'd like to just answer this from the trial sponsor perspective. You know, I think that the priority and the dedication of a sponsor to incorporate community and stakeholder engagement and incorporate good participatory practices at the sponsor level is step number one. And making sure that the enabling environment is there for this engagement to happen isn't just saying that you want to incorporate this. It also requires dedicated resources for partners at the research site level and the community level to actually implement these practices. I just wanted to use this opportunity to mention that related to good participatory practice guidelines and training around that, TB Alliance just concluded a project with AVAC and IAVI with some input also from Janssen. We developed a new training module that is considered a compliance module of GPP, and it's meant for stakeholders at the trial sponsor level, those that are making decisions about implementing clinical trials, donors, principal investigators, and implementers as well. And this is a much shorter and concise training that's available online that we will be implementing in the coming weeks. So I think that making sure that those materials are available to everyone, and also ensuring that there's an understanding across the field that everyone plays a role and has a different responsibility in making sure that resources are available and that the environment is right for that kind of engagement and participation is really important. I just wanted to just invite Azio or Oksana or others to weigh in on that question. I think we're running very low on time, but I wanted to just give this another minute if others have comments.
Thank you, Stefan.
Of course.
Oksana, over to you, or we have time for the last question, maybe, I don't know.
Just to focus again, but it's absolutely crucial for civil society and community representatives to increase their knowledge. Otherwise, we will not. We need to speak the same language with our principal recipient and research teams. Otherwise, we'll always lose the war with them. That's why a big focus for us as civil society and community is to increase our capacities, to build our knowledge, and to be able to respond. Let's say in the sponsor's language, and in this needs time. It cannot happen in one day or in 1 week. It may take years for a community, but only with persevering and being very, very insistent in things that you want to reach, you can have a success. Otherwise, I don't think it's possible. Increasing knowledge and participating in any available learning opportunities for communities is absolutely necessary to be able to respond.
Yeah, thank you, Oksana. I think you raised exactly the point. I mean, the spirit of community engagement is exactly to bridge this. I mean, to bring the clinical studies into the perspective of real life. Because at the end of the day, what we want is the implementation of better guidelines, better principle. That's what we are doing here, discussing BPAL. I think that we play a crucial role when we establish that, and that's very useful, even for clinicians and not only the researchers, but to spread out this information and bring this perspective. I think community engagement brings an eye over time for not only the clinical study in itself, but what it represents in terms of impact into the local policies. That's what we want at the end of the day, that we improve our guidelines. And this is a practical aspect. I remember we had this discussion, a very fruitful discussion exactly over this point within Stream back in 2016 in Georgia. It was a very rich discussion with the drug users network in Georgia, and we had other opportunities to do that. So thank you so much for that. Over to you, Stephanie. I don't know if we have time for the last question or if we should close. Thank you.
Ezio. Thank you, everyone. I think unfortunately we will have to close because we're a little over the hour. I would like to just thank again all the panelists for providing information, and those of you who've asked questions for participating in the dialogue. We will share a summary of the meeting and Q&A discussion along with slides and the recordings in English, Portuguese, and Russian with everyone in the coming days. And as we mentioned, this is a series that we'll be conducting. So we will share information about the upcoming webinar with everyone. And if there are topics that we plan to cover in the upcoming webinars that any of you that are not part of our clinical trial site communities would like to participate in, please let us know and we'd be very happy to include you. With that, I'll say have a wonderful day, afternoon, evening, everyone, and thank you again.
Thank you all.
Thank you, everyone.
Bye-bye, everyone. Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Thank you so much.